Who knows, a friendly little visit like this could be the start of something. You're walking along the street, or you're at a party.
Or else you're alone, and then you suddenly dig. You're looking in someone's eyes, you suddenly realize that this could be the start of something big.
Variety show culture is difficult to quite wrap one's head around, particularly with the passage of time. It is something which we haven't really seen anything like for many years. However, in a world less than 50 years removed from vaudeville, there was a place for the plate spinners, the ventriloquists, and the dancing bears. There were so many names, faces, and careers that proliferated during this era of entertainment, but with the lack of preservation plaguing some of the early years of television, the images are quickly being lost to time. It is in this quest that I found my way to Arthur Worsley's work. YouTube is a goldmine, friends. It is the only place to find clips from the Ed Sullivan Show, which aren't the same old A-list acts we see every other week on MeTV.
And you know what? People write into me and they say, why doesn't he say something? They say, why doesn't he say something? Never says anything, does he? Never says. He's in another world, And if he did open his mouth, you wouldn't understand him. He wouldn't. You wouldn't tell talk from mutter. Would they, son? They're getting that one slowly. They're getting it.
There's no shortage of ventriloquists throughout the middle of the 20th century. Most in the United States are at least tangentially aware of Edgar Bergen and his primary dummy Charlie McCarthy. Others may know Paul Winchell and Jerry Mahoney. Arthur Worsley is a name that might be more familiar to our UK listeners. Born in 1920, his 2001 obituary in the Times Colonist out of British Columbia writes that the youngster fell in love with ventriloquism at a very young age. The article's quoted. He made his first stage appearance at the age of 11 at the casino Rushholme, Manchester, where he was billed as the world's youngest ventriloquist. He made his London debut in 1935 at age 14, and he was soon playing theaters around the country. The London Guardian goes on to report that by Worsley's London debut, he was also making his own dummies and was a full-time touring professional. Ventriloquism is, of course, most at home as a live theatrical performance. In the United States, we had vaudeville honing these variety show acts, while Worsley came up in the variety theatrical scene and toured extensively throughout his career. Worsley's son Michael gave an interview on behalf of the British Library Theatrical Project and spoke on his father's career. He says, "My father was away all the time, you know. I mean, he was really only at home if something had gone wrong. So when I went to school on a daily basis, I was left by the same gate to go to the same bus stop, because when I opened the gate, he might be there waiting in the car. Might be, probably wouldn't be. That might be because he was doing a split week, he got a television, and he'd gotten part of the week at home." An article in the Blackpool Gazette entitled Blackpool's Arthur Worsley, World's Greatest Ventriloquist, gives the most thorough breakdown of the middle of Worsley's career and the greatest insight into this variety theatrical scene, which is shrouded in mystery with the passage of time.
Look what I'm stuck with, eh? Just look at this face, eh? A mean, miserable, moody, melancholic, notionless misfit. I think it's monstrous that I got him to manipulate me. If only I had a real master of ventriloquism, a marvelous maestro, then I could nail in the ender through a miscellaneous mixture of mirthful material.
After serving in World War II as part of ENSA, the Entertainment's National Service Association, he continued headlining, including 10 seasons at the London Palladium. While so many ventriloquists found homes on the radio, Worsley's career seems to peak as television's popularity exploded into the middle of the 1950s and early 1960s. He worked internationally, securing work in Europe, Australia, and the United States. Probably the best remembered of these was Worsley's work on the legendary Ed Sullivan Show. The Blackpool Gazette reports that Worsley debuted on the show in 1955 when it was still known as the Toast of the Town. Newspapers show Worsley in the United States for much of the second half of 1955. A variety of national newspapers show him debuting on the Toast of the Town in July of that year alongside singer Polly Bergen. As mentioned, Worsley's name continually appears in U.S. papers throughout the second half of 1955. Articles in a number of national papers show Worsley playing clubs in Los Angeles during the following months before returning to the toast of the town in November. The Blackpool Gazette continues to report that Worsley would grace Ed Sullivan's stage a dozen times before the show came to an end in 1971. Most often cited is his appearance in January of 1957. Worsley shared a bill with Elvis Presley during this appearance, which ended up being the singer's final performance on the legendary variety program. The Gazette goes on to say that the show was watched by an astounding 50 million people. Worsley is most credited alongside his dummy, Charlie Brown. The act stands out as unique, especially when viewed alongside his ventriloquist contemporaries.
Hey, he's an inventor, you know. He's an inventor, aren't you, son? He's going to make a fortune one of these days. What's your latest, son? Tell him your latest. He's crossed a cow with an octopus. It's true. You know what he's got? A do-it-yourself cow. Isn't that right?
In a unique twist that would almost certainly classify as meta in the contemporary parlance, Worsley remained largely mute while he was on stage, leaving Charlie to do all the talking. In fact, this twist on the usual ideas of ventriloquism initially felt like a bit of a barrier to gaining an appreciation of his work. There's no back and forth between dummy and ventriloquist. However, with the time to play over the few clips that exist, Worsley's surviving footage shines in its intelligence. Charlie does, as I said, all the talking. The dummy grumbles. He berates his controller. Why is it when I shout, you spit in my face?
When I saw you, we have been, is everybody all right in the ditch? We have been all over, not Cartel, all over the world. And he didn't like it. He says next year he's going somewhere else. And you're lucky to see us tonight. What a time. You're lucky tonight. Aren't they lucky tonight? Oh, gosh. Hey? Looking when I'm talking, son.
Watching his surviving work, Worsley proves himself to be a whip-smart comedian with an act that doesn't shy away from deconstructing ventriloquism as an art form. This, of course, begins with the fact that Worsley rarely speaks on stage. While so many ventriloquists focus on the interaction with their dummy, in keeping his mouth shut, there's added pressure to bring this creation to life. This lump of wood has to stand out on its own and has to carry the act. It has to be even more human because there is nowhere to hide.
There's nothing I like better than a christening. Do you like, son, look at me, do you like a christening, eh? I love a christening. Son, do you remember, look at me, look at Charlie, do you remember when you were christened, eh? Of course, we all know this lad as Arthur Worsley, but his real name is Arthur Glastit Worsley. That's his real name. The vicar called his knee on the font. And he was on a doorstep in a little basket. He was on a doorstep as a child for 2 days, and nobody took him, did they, son? Nobody took you. So his father and mother opened the front door and took him in again.
The deconstruction continues from a number of different angles. At one point, Worsley physically turns Charlie around to show how he's working the dummy. Worsley's hand can be seen inside Charlie's chest cavity, rhythmically maneuvering his head, which at one point does a 180-degree turn and cheekily pretends to be a priest. You've never seen this on television unless you've crawled around the back of the set. How would you like to go through life like that? No guts in someone else's hands where your kidneys ought to be. This moment feeds smoothly into the bit which seems the most remembered in Worsley's work. Bottle of beer. The general conceit is that certain consonants are difficult for ventriloquists to say without moving their lips, with B being one of the most difficult. As it plays out, Charlie demands that Worsley say, bottle of beer, without moving his mouth.
Without moving your mouth. Go on. Say a bottle of beer, without moving your mouth. Say!
And when Worsley remains mute, Charlie spins around and shouts it repeatedly into Worsley's face.
While I'm close up to you. Go on! Say, I've got to look here, 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 I've got to look here. You can't do it, can you? It never has been done, ladies and gentlemen. It's impossible, but I can do it. Watch me. I've got to look beer. which one's the dummy.
The moment seems particularly geared for television, and it works impeccably. The joke would, of course, fall flat if Worsley's lips could be seen moving, and in the unforgiving nature of variety show television, he shines in the moment. Check out his appearance on the November 3rd, 1963 episode of The Ed Sullivan Show to see the comedian at the peak of his powers. Worsley remains static in a close-up, and any lip movements are barely discernible. By contrast, Paul Winchell and Edgar Bergen were typically filmed with lots of cuts. Worsley continued working regularly throughout the 1960s and 1970s before eventually retiring in 1980. He passed away in 2001 at the age of 80. The inherent intelligence and confidence in Worsley's act leads to a glowing commentary. In his 2001 obituary in The Guardian, he's called the ventriloquist's ventriloquist. This is often a thankless moniker. It is not often that the most intelligent in any medium receives popular, long-standing acclaim. However, with each additional clip that I find and each article that I read, I want to see his work preserved. I want to see some writing on Arthur Worsley's life. While he was mute on stage, the mind boggles at the stories that remain untold. This is, of course, not a comprehensive breakdown. At present, YouTube has roughly 6 surviving clips featuring Worsley at various points throughout his career. Ultimately, though, these clips, most of which come from The Ed Sullivan Show, only cover about 15 years of Worsley's more than 40 years on stage. In fact, in his British Library interview, Michael Worsley admits that his father largely didn't use his stage act when he was on television, protecting his livelihood for the theater where he saw most of his work. So, with each passing year, the lack of surviving video clips means the memories of this fascinating comedian risk slipping further into the haze of history. Stay tuned for more here at Ticklish Business as we honor and deconstruct the world of classic entertainment. My name is Kim. You can find me on Twitter at ticklish_biz as well as at kpierce624. Facebook person, give us a like or a follow over at Ticklish Business Podcast. We have lots of classic entertainment content posting at journeysinclassicfilm.com. As always, if you like what you're seeing, please like and subscribe. Thanks, guys.